Welcome to the Tech Mechanic. Today's breakdown is part of our Azure Architecture Master Series. If you want the full roadmap, then hit the playlist from the start. With that said, let's dive into today's topic. Imagine you are running a shopping application used by thousands of customers. Suddenly, customers start reporting that checkout is failing. The application is still online. The servers are running. But something is wrong. As an architect or engineer, how do you find the problem? You can't manually open thousands of log files and search through them one by one. You need a centralized place where you can collect, search, and analyze your logs. And that's where Azure Log Analytics Workspace comes in. Before understanding log analytics, let's understand what a log actually is. A log is simply a record of something that happened. An application might record when an order was created. A database might record an error. A server might record a security event. These individual records become extremely valuable when we are trying to understand what happened inside our system. Now imagine a modern enterprise application. We may have APIs, virtual machines, containers, databases, functions, and many other Azure resources. Every component can generate its own telemetry. Suddenly we have logs everywhere. And that's the problem. How do we bring all of this information together and search it efficiently? This is where Log Analytics Workspace comes in. Think of it as a centralized workspace where telemetry from different sources can be collected and analyzed. Instead of checking every system independently, we can use one place to investigate what's happening across our environment. For an architect, this becomes particularly useful when designing monitoring for large distributed systems. Think about a detective investigating a crime. Imagine every piece of evidence is stored in a different building. Investigation would be painful. Now imagine everything is brought into one evidence center where the detective can search and correlate information. That's the basic idea behind a centralized log analytics workspace. Collect the evidence in one place, then investigate it. Depending on how our Azure environment is configured, we can collect different types of telemetry. We can investigate application activity, infrastructure events, errors, performance information, and other operational data. The important architectural idea is this. Centralized telemetry gives us a much better view of a distributed system. But collecting millions of logs is not enough. We need a way to ask questions about that data. This is where Kusto Query Language, or KQL, becomes extremely powerful. KQL allows engineers and architects to query telemetry and find specific information. For example, we can ask, "Show me requests that return server errors." Instead of manually reading thousands of records, the query gives us the information we need. Let's take a simple example. Suppose I want to find server errors from the last hour. I can filter the telemetry by time and response code. Then I can summarize the number of errors. We don't need to become KQL experts in this video. The important thing is to understand the architecture. Telemetry goes into the workspace, KQL queries that telemetry, and the results help us troubleshoot the system. Now let's leave the architecture diagram and open the Azure portal. I'll navigate to Log Analytics Workspaces. Here we can see our workspace and access the logs and query environment. This is where the concepts we've discussed become practical. Instead of looking at a static diagram, we are actually going to investigate telemetry from the Azure environment. Let's look at 3 ways to get up and running with log analytics in the Azure portal. First, to find an existing workspace, log into the Azure portal. In the top search bar, type Log Analytics Workspaces and select it under the Services category. From the list, click on your workspace name to open its overview dashboard. Second, If you don't have a workspace yet, you can create one easily. Search for Log Analytics Workspaces and click Create in the top toolbar. Fill in the basics. Select your Azure subscription and resource group. Give your workspace a unique name, like La Workspace Azure, and pick the region closest to your resources. Then, click Review plus Create, and hit Create once validation passes. Finally, once inside your workspace, look at the left navigation menu under General and click Logs. This opens the Custo Query Language Editor, where you can run pre-built queries or write custom KQL, like Azure Diagnostics vertical bar take 10, to start analyzing your data. Let's imagine our checkout service is returning HTTP 500 errors. Instead of guessing, we can search the telemetry. We can filter the relevant time period. Look at failed requests. Investigate exceptions. And then follow the evidence until we find the underlying problem. This is the real value of centralized logging. It turns troubleshooting from guessing into investigation. Now let's connect this with our previous Azure Monitor video. Azure Monitor gives us the broader monitoring ecosystem. Metrics help us understand numerical measurements. Logs give us detailed records of events. Application Insights helps us understand application behavior. And Log Analytics gives us a powerful environment to query and analyze log data. These services and capabilities work together rather than existing in isolation. Let's return to our shopping application. Customers report that checkout is failing. We search the logs and find a large number of HTTP 500 responses. We narrow the investigation to the order and payment services. Then we discover that the payment service is repeatedly timing out while calling an external payment provider. We now have a potential root cause. Notice what happened. We didn't randomly restart servers. We didn't guess. We followed the evidence. Here's an important architect's lesson. Don't design monitoring just because someone says, "We need logs." Ask what those logs are going to accomplish. Can we search them? Can we correlate them? Can we detect important patterns? Can we create alerts? Can the operations team actually use them to troubleshoot problems? Observability is valuable only when telemetry leads to useful insight and action. Here's a simple enterprise monitoring pattern. Our users interact with the application. Different Azure services generate telemetry. Azure Monitor collects and exposes that telemetry. Logs can be sent to a Log Analytics Workspace. Engineers can use KQL to query the data. And the results can feed dashboards, alerts, and investigations. This is a pattern you'll see again and again in enterprise Azure architectures. Let's finish with an architect's challenge. Your API suddenly starts returning 10,000 errors. What do you do first? Restart the server? Check CPU? Check the logs? Or investigate application insights together with centralized logs? Put your answer in the comments. And remember, Azure Monitor tells us what's happening. Log Analytics helps us investigate the evidence behind it. Whether your goal is to become a solution architect, cloud architect, AI architect, or simply a better software engineer, the Tech Mechanic is your learning destination. Like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to stay ahead in your tech journey.